Hey again, this is Gary Rogers back on the porch. We're going to have a beautiful Saturday afternoon in Great Falls, Virginia. So we're going to talk a bit about another myth in the care and treatment and understanding of torticollis and plagiocephaly. And this one is back sleeping. So the common thread out there, and you read this on scientific papers, you read this on websites, is that flattening was caused by back sleeping. It's a common misconception. So it sounds rational. You think, well, didn't we see a massive rise in head flattening after the 1992 Back to Sleep campaign in the West? Absolutely, we did. Saw a huge rise in this. In fact, to a degree that was almost so concerning. There was actually groups in the country, institutions in the country that were operating on this because they mistakenly thought this was lambdoid synostosis. So saw this massive rise in the incidence, and people said, well, this back sleeping is the cause, back sleeping is the problem. Really, no. The risk factors for plagiocephaly didn't change. Torticollis, prematurity, developmental delay, and we saw plagiocephaly clinically. It's been written up in papers. It was studied long before the Back to Sleep campaign in populations of kids that were prone slep, meaning front slep. So it was out there. In fact, the guy who developed the molding helmet that people use now, Sterling Claren, developed that and wrote the paper in 1979. He was treating plagiocephaly in kids that were front slept. Here's the difference. So what changed? Well, what changed is, think about the growth patterns of the infant head. So the forehead and the face are not bulging forward and growing as quickly as the back is. The occiput grows much quicker. Most of the growth relative to the frontal facial plane is going backwards. That makes sense? So the face is growing slowly, the forehead's growing slowly. If it weren't, their forehead would be protruding out as big as the occiput is. But if you ever look at a newborn, their occiput is very large, very protrusive, and overdeveloped relative to the rest of the cranium. So if you think about how flattening occurs because you have an object growing against an external resistance, an external force. That force being the bed in an infant head is much like a pumpkin growing in a field. If it's growing against the ground, the external force is the ground against which it lays. It's Newton's law, equal and opposite forces. It grows around that point of obstruction and develops a flat spot over time. Same thing happens with the infant cranium over the first 4 or 5 months, before kids start rolling and have the sufficient motor control. So if the back is growing far faster and displacing more growth faster than the front, you're going to see a massive rise in trajectory of flattening. So kids front slep, flattening may occur at this trajectory, and kids who are back slep occur like this. And so we see a lot more kids reaching the threshold where the flattening would be noticed. So there may be as many kids getting flat, but the degree of flatness is much higher in kids that are back slept. So severity is worse, and that of course drives the incidence. So the incidence really, I think, is secondary to the fact that we're seeing more kids. So how do you define flattening? If you define, asymmetry at 10 millimeters, well, in front slep population, there may be a certain number of kids that get there, a very small number. And in the back slep population, you may see many, many kids that get there. So the incidence will look much greater. But anyway, this is how back sleeping contributes to flattening. It's not that it changed the risk factors. It's not that it's an independent risk factor per se, although you could say that because obviously it's associated, but it unmasks the kids that are at risk. Remember, all kids don't get flat, even laying on their back. 30% get flat. It's not 100%. This is why soft skull and all these other myths are not true, is that it's a very select group of kids who get flat. And these kids have, again, the 3 risk factors: torticollis, developmental delay, and prematurity. Okay? Until next time.